This meeting of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is now in session. This is our formal meeting format. At this time, I ask that everyone in attendance please silence their electronic devices and phones. And I ask my colleagues to acknowledge their presence on the voting board. I ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Please rise as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any awards or recognitions this evening, but Dr. Spence, we are looking forward to hearing the superintendent's report.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairwoman Anderson and members of the board. So tonight we're going to mix things up just a little bit. Typically, in the first meeting of the month, I'd be outlining for you the 5 things you need to know about Virginia Beach City Public Schools this month. However, as we were looking at the quarterly forecast and saw that today you'd be receiving an update on our work in special education, we knew really there would be no better time to hear the story of our latest compass keeper, Leilani Lane. Leilani is a beloved student at Princess Anne Elementary School, and she has spent the majority of her time at Princess Anne working with various specialists and technologies to aid in her instruction. This year, however, all of that work came to a head when Leilani was given an Accent 1400, a voice output system that truly allowed her to be able to share her voice. As you're about to see, the ramifications of using this system have been life-changing for Leilani, and quite honestly, for the adults who teach and assist her. So let's watch part of her story now.
My name is Alani. I live in Virginia Beach. I go to Princess Anne Elementary School. This is my talker. She helps me speak.
Leilani led that change. We followed her lead with this. She showed a lot of ability and progress using the previous device. She showed some literacy skills. She was reading. And using that information, we thought it'd be a good idea to transition to something more advanced for her.
Yeah, I think the device has leveled her playing field to where we get to see what she really has to say and what she knows.
She's definitely demonstrating a level of comprehension that's equal to her peers. It's just kind of an amazing thing. We just didn't know what was in there, and now that she can communicate and show us what she's thinking, it's pretty cool.
We have story time in my classroom, and she'll bring up her device and read stories to the other students, which are on different lower levels than she is. It's just fascinating to see her do that.
When she participates in small group lessons, she answers the questions. She uses her Chromebook as well as her eye gaze machine to read whatever passages we're working on, and she'll interact with the other students in the group as they answer questions as well.
Just because a child has a disability, it doesn't mean that they're not very aware of what's going on around them, just because the output is different than you or me. But by giving them that assistive technology to level that playing field, I think there's a lot of kids that would benefit from this. So just helps us to kind of keep our eyes open for those opportunities.
She's only had this device since October, and in that amount of time, she's been able to locate and remember the location of specific vocabulary and use it in context appropriately, and a lot of it has been self-taught just by working on her own and practicing with the device. So that's pretty incredible to see.
I think everybody in this building wants to see Leilani succeed, and that goes down to the kids. You know, as she's going through the hallways, kids are constantly saying, "Hi, Leilani." They want to hear her speak to them with their device. Everybody's just been very supportive, and that's just kind of the nature of our building.
Everyone in the cafeteria, they come up to, "Hi, Leilani, how you doing?" She shares. Everyone in our school community knows Leilani.
Strange. Sing.
I think it gives her an opportunity to be like any other non-disabled peer. Just to see her be able to tell her mom, "I love you," with that device, or say good morning to someone, to say something awesome.
Teaching and learning are reciprocal, and she has probably taught me far more than I could teach her.
So, Leilani is with us here tonight, along with her sister and her stepmother, Celeste. Leilani, I just want to say, first of all, you have an amazing, beautiful smile. And before I forget to tell you this, Leilani, Stranger Things is a big hit in our house, too. We are incredibly proud of you, dear, and the work that you're doing each and every day, challenging yourself to use your tablet and keep learning. And we want to thank you for sharing your story with us tonight. Also here tonight are Princess Anne Elementary Principal Ivy Roten, along with Leilani's speech and language pathologist, Erin Tokager, her special education teacher, Denise Yarn, and fourth grade teacher, Lisa Powers. If you all could just stand up with Leilani and let us know you're here, we just want to appreciate you for your work. Obviously, to say that this is a team effort is an understatement, but this small group of people have made an immeasurable impact in Leilani's life. And Principal Roten was absolutely correct when he said his entire building is rooting for her success, and that emanates from the effort and passion that each of you bring to her education each and every single day. So thank you for everything that you're doing for not just her, but for all of the children in your school and across our city. So to see her story again, visit bbschools.com, or you can visit our blog, The Core, to see more Compass Keeper stories. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. That completes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on agenda items this evening?
None on agenda items.
Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve our minutes from the February 27th meeting. The motion is made by Mrs. Manning, seconded by Mrs. Weems. The voting board is open. The minutes from the February 27th meeting have been approved. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve our minutes from the March 6th special meeting. The motion is made by Mrs. Riggs, seconded by Mr. Edwards. The voting board is open. The minutes from the March 6th special meeting have been approved. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for the meeting this evening. The motion is made by Mrs. Holt, seconded by Ms. McLeod. Voting board is open. The agenda has been adopted. We did not have any items this evening on the consent agenda. But under action, we only have one item, and that is the personnel report. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the personnel report. Mrs. Rye has made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Felton. And is there any discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open for your vote. Next, we have Policy Review Committee recommendations under information.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, school board members, and Dr. Spence, I'm Cami Linetti, School Board Legal Counsel. On behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'll be presenting the current recommendations for policy and bylaw changes. The first one on our agenda tonight is Appendix B. These are the standing rules for the school board bylaws on this one. If you take a look up under the formal meeting, under Section 8, we've just made changed the title of one of the policies that you have and we're now calling it public comments at school board meetings as opposed to public participation. You'll see that shows up later on. The significant change that we've added is under number 16. It has to do with speakers. There was some discussion before about school board members and speakers. The Policy Review Committee is recommending to change the time from 3 minutes for comments to 4 minutes for comments. And again, you'll see the change to the term public comments at school board meetings rather than public participation. Those are the only changes to the standing rules and bylaws, Appendix B. Under Bylaw 1.5, this is School Board Legal Counsel. The change in this comes in the third paragraph. What is now recommended to say is that the chairman will present the request to the school board for determination by majority consensus. 1, whether the school board legal counsel should complete the opinion. 2, the scope of the opinion. And 3, the manner in which the opinion will be provided to the school board. And then we're recommending that you take out the sentence, the chairman shall forward the request to the school board legal counsel. There are no further changes to that particular bylaw. Under Bylaw 147, this goes back, as I mentioned before, when we look at the standing rules, we look at the public comments. After looking at this particular overall bylaw, the Policy Review Committee determined that perhaps the term public participation was an accurate representation of what this bylaw actually deals with, so they've recommended that we change it to the public comments at school board meetings. The changes you'll see in this one are not that significant, but what they actually decided after Policy Review Committee looking at this was that there were some old practices that we've never enforced with the school board, and that they recommended removing them. The first is under Section B, which talks about advanced request procedures. We've long time had a procedure in place where elected officials from the district could go to the front of the line and presenting comments. I remember only once in 20 years this happening. I've not seen it done before then. I don't think that's a significant issue, and as Mr. Edwards pointed out, there really isn't an issue for us, so the recommendation was to pull that out. Under subsection D, there was also a long paragraph having to do with cumulative remarks by the speakers, that they should not continue to make those remarks. Again, in 20 years, I've not seen this done. Mr. Edwards also mentioned we've not seen anybody cut off for making repetitive remarks. Policy Review Committee then recommended that this entire paragraph be removed. Section E, also an outdated one. It talked about the fact that if you were going to turn in documents to be handed to the board, that you would have to provide 14 hard copies. For those of you who've been on the board for a long time, you do remember there was a time when we delivered hard copies to you starting on Wednesday. It took us 2 days to do that. We don't do that anymore. It didn't make a lot of sense to require copies because we felt electronically we could scan them and get them to you. So the Policy Review Committee recommended removing this entire paragraph. Those are the only changes to Bylaw 147. Bylaw 148 has to do with decorum and order in public and school board meetings. This is the second part having to do with the speakers. There are significant changes in this section that you'll want to pay attention to. Under subsection A, which talks about the purpose of decorum, we did go ahead and add into the sentence, it is the intent of the school board by the adoption of this bylaw to maintain appropriate decorum and order for, but not limited to the following purposes. And then we broke out, instead of one paragraph, we spelled them out, the reasons why you would have decorum in them. Particularly, we wanted to make a note that during meetings, it's important that we be able to conduct the meetings in an orderly fashion, so we wanted to clarify those. So we did not change significantly anything. We did end up adding a section 4 that says that students and other young audience members who attend and watch the meetings are not subject to inappropriate language. That would be one reason for decorum. Unlike city council meetings, other meetings, you often do have younger students here participating in them. We want to make sure that the language is appropriate and the content is appropriate for them. And that is, by First Amendment standards, an appropriate reason for a school board to limit certain First Amendment rights in this context. Subsection 5 also pointed out that school board members, school division employees or other agents, because sometimes you have consultants and other people coming in here, are able to transact the business of the school board with minimal disruption while allowing for public input. Again, we want to stress the point that the school board wants to hear from the public, but we have to be allowed, everybody watching on TV or participating in the room needs to be able to hear it and understand that you as a school board member need to be able to hear that. So if there's significant disruption and they're interfering with the meeting, that is a reason why you can control the meeting. We also looked at limitations on addressing the school board. Under subsection B, it was my recommendation to remove under subsection B2, talking about refrain from insults and other words that could be considered inappropriate on there. This has to do with a legal case that came out about 2 years ago that significantly talks about what's the First Amendment rights you're allowed to have and whether you're allowed to make comments that may be offensive to some people. My recommendation after reviewing this case that we remove this section. What I, however, did was add back down into a lower section that you will refrain from obscenity, vulgarity, and comments or actions with the intent to incite violence or disruption of the peace. So that does allow you, if somebody's coming in here to a meeting as too disruptive and it's necessary to shut down the meeting, you do have the right to cut them out for that. But insult is a subjective term that's very difficult for us to enforce. So after looking at that policy review committee, recommend that we move that out. Subsection C talks about other expressive activities at school board meetings. On there was not a significant change to this section. Subsection D, we had some conversation on other ways to communicate with the school board. There was concern by certain school board members that people be able to contact the school board members and let them know. But at the same time, during a meeting is not always the appropriate place to stop that to hand you papers on there. So what section we've added to this policy is the school board encourages citizens and other interested parties to communicate with the school board regarding matters related to public education. Due to the limited time scheduled to conduct business and the need to follow approved agenda items, school board meetings may not be conducive to all forms of communication to the school board. Persons seeking to communicate with the school board should use other methods of communication in addition to those provided by the school board meetings. We came up with this language after talking about how could they get a hold of it. We wanted to make it clear to them that this is one area you can speak, but obviously there's limited times, and we wanted to encourage the public to make sure that they could contact you outside of meetings and find other ways to get that information to you. We're not shutting them down. The school board has a limited amount of time during its meetings to entertain those kind of comments on there. And then subsection X just talks about using or disruptive noises or devices during school board meetings. As you heard, the chairwoman made an announcement again at the beginning of the meeting. We want to make it clear that just electronic devices during meetings can be disruptive to us and interfere with the meeting. Policy 242 had to do with school improvement. There is not a significant change to this. It's only in paragraphs A2 talks about they wanted to make sure that you develop measurable objectives that align with the strategic plan for the school division and school-specific needs, which may include, nothing else in that changes. They just want to make sure the language is consistent with how the school division is going ahead and doing its business right now. Policy 457 has to do with licensed personnel and contracts. The only changes to these appear in the legal references. I was just updating to the current titles. There's nothing significant. The policy itself was not changed. Also in policy 462, there was an update to one of the legal references. Other than that, there are no policy recommended changes from the policy review committee. This time I can answer any questions on the policies or bylaws that have been presented.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you. Main question and a couple comments on the other policies. On bylaw 1.5, legal counsel, I know I've had a couple conversations with my colleagues about this. It was my first 4 years on the board. A legal opinion was a rarity for a board member to request, and that might be changing. So I understand why we may need to provide a little bit more guidance on this. I will say that I am adamantly opposed to subsection 1 of that, where it says what the board will determine whether legal counsel should complete the opinion. I'm of the belief that if a board member requests an opinion, it should be given regardless of what the rest of the board feels. But I am in support of the board determining what the scope of that opinion would be and the manner in which the opinion should be delivered. Further on, where we're talking about board communications policy, bylaw 148, the other methods of communication in addition to those provided at school board meetings. I would like some additional information there, whether it be via email, and addresses are posted on the website or something of that sort, since this is instructing the public in how they can communicate with us,
You want directions for how someone can submit it to you?
or just contact information is on the website or something of that nature. The other methods, my question is such as, and so a little bit more guidance there. And I think that is, oh, also in bylaw 1.5, sorry, I had another note. The manner in which the opinion is provided to the board, I would like to define options for the manner, whether that is written or verbal. That's it for me.
Mrs. Weems?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Policy Review Committee, for, again, going through so many of our policies and bylaws. With number bylaw Appendix B, School Board Standing Rules, I like that y'all added a minute to it, because I think so many times we have speakers coming out here for 3 minutes, and that's just, not quite enough time, and they have to end so quickly, so I do like that. For number B, for letter B, bylaw 1.5, legal counsel, I totally agree with Mr. McDonald. I've been on the board, Dan and I have been on the board quite a while, and we can probably count the legal opinions we've had in the last 2 decades. So it's nothing that we're taxing our attorneys' time with, every other day. And I think that if any school board member needs a legal opinion, I'm not a lawyer, and I trust you to give me legal opinions. And so I think that if one board member, if I request a legal opinion, that I think that I shouldn't have 5 other people have to vote to get that legal opinion. So I definitely want to keep it that if any board member wants a legal opinion, that he or she may obtain that, with just that one asking. The other qualifications, I'm fine with discussing that, to let the board or the policy committee go back and determine the parameters of that legal opinion, and if we're going to have it written, or, for us to discuss that and vote on that, that would be fine with me. Okay, thank you.
Ms. McLeod?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I'm in absolute concurrence with Mr. McDonald and Ms. Weems as well. I believe that if I'm 99% sure that City Council doesn't have a restriction on this as well, that anyone who wants that opinion should be able to get it. And so therefore, I don't want us to add the whether it should be completed or whether the council should complete the opinion. Like Mr. McDonald, I have no problem with us deciding the scope of the opinion collectively as a group and the manner in which it'll be provided. And so I don't know at the top when it says a request by a school board member for a written legal opinion should be reworded to say by a school board member for a provided opinion. Because it's defined written there, but then 3 kind of in the opinion will be provided in this. How it will be provided, the manner. So I don't know if you want to have written in your top line when you're saying in number 3, the manner provided. That almost is like conflicting with itself. You're a better wordsmith than I am.
Y'all call me all the time and talk to me, so I'm always giving you advice.
Yeah.
Maybe by email sometimes. I don't want everything to get prior approval, because nothing's going to get done if that happens. So I think when you want a significant legal opinion, this is all this paragraph is, maybe doing this one, because obviously I'm giving you advice whenever you call or email.
Yeah.
So I don't want to limit that to somebody saying I have to get a vote from the board to be able to talk to you.
I completely agree with that. That wasn't my point. But maybe I didn't express the manner in which the opinion will be provided to the school board. Number 3 in this that we're adding, to me, says deciding whether it's a verbal decision or it's a written decision, or if it's a, in a closed session kind of opportunity. But the very beginning one says this is for a written legal opinion. So to me, the first sentence and the third conflict with each other, because it's saying it's for a written legal. Or is that you're saying it should be kept that way? So to define whether it's a quick call, Cammie, am I in conflict here? Or Cammie, should I talk to this person? Or Cammie, this? But you're saying when it's something that may be a written legal, that's why you want to keep that verbiage there?
I think the purpose of this particular paragraph was if you were going to do a significant document. So clearly, all day long, I'm providing advice at this
Exactly.
point. So that's not something you'd want
Right.
to put it on there. When there's going to be a significant amount of time given to a document that could be taken and used somewhere else, that might be when the board wants to decide where it is and how it's going to be presented to that. So I wouldn't want any limiting language that prevented me from talking with you about day-to-day advice.
I don't think this does that. Yeah. Okay, all right. But completely, as if we were to go and eliminate number 1 and 2 and 3, I'm fine with. And agree with adding the additional minute. There's very seldom we get that many speakers here. I mean, we had 40 here recently, but I mean, that was absolutely appropriate that we should have heard that many people, and giving that extra, like 40, an extra 40 minutes, so be it.
Mr. Edwards?
I like the suggested changes from Mr. McDonald. The only purpose of restrictions is to put some cap on the amount of staff time that can be directed by a single board member. We don't have an overabundance of lawyer time. Even though we've increased it, the demands continue to outstrip the legal staff time available. So I think the wording you can bring back at the next meeting, which would, again, I think legal opinion or written opinion is appropriate at the front end, because yes, you've got to be able to answer a call over the phone, and if you've got it without any research, then by all means deliver it immediately to the board member on the other end. But if it's going to require you to go off and spend research any significant amount of time, then I think you probably need to refer it to the chair and find out and ensure that the board collective, is supportive of the manner in which you're going to proceed.
I wasn't going to say it. Mrs. Rye?
I just wanted to note, since the subject of conflict of interest opinions was raised, that there is a separate bylaw 124 that addresses that, just for clarity. Yeah. Okay.
It also, the fourth paragraph in bylaw 1.5 also directs the conflict of interest opinions.
I knew as soon as it's through.
Mrs. Manning?
Thank you, Policy Review Committee. I really like the changes that you made to the policy that's allowing more time for citizens to speak. I think that's a welcome change. Our public spoke to us and we listened. And I would like to ask you a question. How many legal opinions have been requested in the last 2 years?
That I would consider a written
Written
one.
legal
I mean,
opinion.
certainly I'm providing you
Written
email
legal
as this
opinion.
one, probably 2 or 3 significant ones.
2 or 3. Okay. So do you feel that's overburdening your staff?
What I will tell you is the time period in which we have to produce it sometimes, if we were in the middle of that. But obviously, we just redirect resources in the office. If you're hitting us at a time period when we're in the middle of a lot of lawsuits, that can be a little difficult for us. But we would have to redirect the resources at that time into doing the opinion if that needs to be done right away, as opposed to take somebody out of doing a trial.
Okay. And I concur with Ms. Weems that, I really don't think that we need any changes to this policy. Thank you.
Mrs. Weems?
Yeah, Ms. Rye, if when this, I'm assuming this will go back to the Policy Review Committee. Okay, and could y'all kind of compare to see what City Council does? And I'm pretty sure General Assembly, if you want a written legal opinion, you ask the Attorney General, and it can just be one person. So maybe just get a feeling of what other folks are doing, because I think if it's substantial, that I'd rather our lawyer know in advance if it's going to be written. I don't want just, at the last minute, well, you can tell us, no, you have to write it, and then people change their mind, and then, all that stuff. So I'd like to kind of have that up front, and maybe y'all could research it a little bit. Thank you.
I have no problem with, with what Mr. McDonald suggested in that the board collectively would decide the manner in which the opinion is given, for example, whether it be oral or whether it be written. I think at that point in time, we need to decide collectively, because we have to remember that as board members, we are not individuals in a case where we're asking staff to perform extra work for us. We can ask staff to do things for us collectively in many cases, even though I know that asking for a legal opinion is important at times, and there are times that you need to have that. But as far as the manner in which it's given, whether it's oral or whether it's written, I think that's where the board in general needs to decide collectively as a whole. But that's just my opinion on it, so anyway. Thank you. Ms. Linetti? I didn't see your name, I'm sorry.
I'd like to
I missed it.
I'd like to respond to Chairman Anderson's comments. This was specifically for a legal opinion. I would hate for us to go and start feeling we needed to put policy in for me wanting to call Mr. Mira to go and ask for something that way. I just, we are elected individually. This is my point. We're elected individually. We have the right to ask questions. I think everyone concurs and understands that the goal is not to overburden our staff. And so I just want to clarify that. That made me feel very defensive, Chairman Anderson.
That was not my intent.
But I wanted to share with you that that's how it came across to me.
It was not intended that way. So
okay, thank you
my
for clarifying.
point was, we need to remember that we need to act collectively as a board in many cases.
In many cases, but there is no reason that we can't still act individually as an individually elected
Absolutely,
person.
especially if you're asking for a legal opinion. But my point is, we need to make sure that if we're asking for that legal opinion to be written or oral, that's where we as a board need to decide whether we want to.
With that part, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melnick.
I interpreted that policy, I think, a little more formal. So calling Mr. Mira, that happens every day, but I saw this as a formal ask for a legal opinion. And I do agree with Mr. McDonald that we leave it as, do we decide collectively as a board if it should be written or verbal when it's a formal ask? In the case of the last one, there was no difference between the verbal and the written. And so I think that that's an important piece to remember. But I read this as formal, not every
Sometimes
day.
it has to do with the amount of questions or the complexity of the question that may take a lot of time to answer.
Right. Are there any other comments or suggestions? Thank you, Ms. Linetti. Do we have any standing committee reports? Mrs. Riggs.
Speaker on. Ashley McLeod and I have been to the community CIP meetings on when they are deciding to build our next schools and just get the input from our community. And there's been 4 forums. We've already had 2, and Ashley and I attended the Tallwood one. They're being poorly attended, unfortunately. However, the great part is the survey that's gone out, we're getting a lot of responses on the survey, so that's fantastic. But it's just a really good forum. You get a lot of great information. I'll just say, I brought my husband along to this last one. He's like, wow. You know, he really, and I had to convince him to go. But anyway, with him going, he realized, you know, it wasn't a waste of his time. He got a lot of information. And the people that are presenting it are very knowledgeable, and they work very hard and do a fantastic job. And I think it answered some, you know, there's a couple people that came that, you know, wanted to ask some questions about, well, why the school and why, you know, why that school and swing space, just all kinds of things. They got a lot of their answers because the presentation is really good. So if you have that opportunity, we have 2 more. One is tomorrow night at Kellam High School. They're from 6 to 7:30, and the last one is Thursday night at Great Neck Middle School. We've had them at every different part of the city to give you that opportunity. So if you can come, it's well worth it.
Ashley?
And if not, please go online and take the survey online.
Yes.
Do we have any other standing committee? Oh, Ms. Weems?
I attended the Special Education Advisory Committee's monthly meeting, and we basically heard the Dr. Gatling's 5-year report that we heard earlier. But some other items that I wanted to announce. The Hampton Roads is getting together an event called Let's Get Ready Together. And it's really neat. It's for overnight emergency. It's an overnight emergency shelter exercise. And it's going to be Saturday, April 7th. And it's at Norview High School, but it's for the whole region. And basically, it is for folks that have a loved one that has disabilities, and it's kind of to go camp out there all night as if you were in a shelter, hurricane, a disaster, and you have to seek shelter. And really, your input is going to help the planners make it better for when a building like this is really needed. So, they're going to value your input, and this is a great opportunity to go and share really what would make it easier, especially if you have, a loved one with special needs. So again, that's April 7th at 10 o'clock, at 4 o'clock Friday, April 6th, I'm sorry, till 10 o'clock Saturday morning. So it'll be fun, I'm sure, and challenging too. Another thing is House Bill 1265. It talked about educational preparation for reading specialists, and it will have the information on dyslexia. That was given to us, and that we've been talking a lot about that, so everybody was real psyched about that. As we said earlier, the Little Feet Meet will be on March 27th at Tallwood High School. And then last of all, the Parent Support Center is hosting an event at Corporate Landing Middle School. It's a workshop from 6:30 to 8. And Dr. Gatling, I just completely lost the date of that. Can you research that real quick? It's a Parent Support Center. And she will, Parent Connection, yeah. And she'll send it up here, and I'll announce it after somebody else goes. How's that?
All right, we're going to go back to Mrs. Riggs.
I didn't want to take it all at one time, but I'm also on the Sister Cities along with Dottie Holtz, and we are getting ready to announce, we've chosen the youth ambassador for Sister Cities, and we're going to be having an activity. I've invited our board members to this breakfast that's coming up, but also the Cherry Blossom Festival is coming up, and it is in, it's April the, I have to announce it later, but it's April. It's at Red Wing Park. It's from 9 to 12, and it's an excellent activity. It's Saturday. I don't have my calendar with me, but anyway, it's coming up. I'll announce it later. I'll give y'all that information. I didn't have it sitting in front of me.
We need to take better notes during the
I know. I have it in my calendar, which is in my book bag. But anyway, I didn't want to take your time. So anyway, Sister Cities. We want to get it out there. It's just such an important part of our city, and the basic idea of it is building friendships with cities across the world that we can connect with, and it's to instill peace and friendship, and we have 6 of them. Thank you.
Any other? Ms. Weems, are you ready?
I've got the date. Thanks to
Coming back.
Thanks to my
Okay.
little helper in the audience.
Tell us what it is again.
It's Thursday, March 15th. The Parent Support Center is hosting a workshop, and it's at 6:30 to 8 o'clock this Thursday at Corporate Landing Middle School.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Riggs, you have the date now?
Yes. The date for the Cherry Blossom Festival is at Red Wing Park, and it's at 12 o'clock on the 24th of March, Saturday.
Oh, next Saturday.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I see that we have, I'm sorry, what was that? We have another one? Mrs. Rye, sorry, I missed you.
So I can mention a recent Gifted Advisory Committee meeting I attended, and the one point I wanted to bring up was it was at Plaza Middle, which is the site of the middle years program for the IB program, and the presentation, the one one of the interesting things that I gleaned from it was the comment was made that as we delve further into our Compass to 2020, that Virginia Beach City Public Schools as a whole is more closely mirrors the IB approach to teaching and learning. So I thought that was interesting enough to share.
Are there any other standing committee reports? Thank you. Seeing none. That concludes our formal meeting. Madam Clerk, I see that we have several speakers on non-agenda items. So